EZDrummer's added playstyle feature is a very nice tool to make any beat your perfect beat. And in this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know to get started with this feature. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Toby and welcome to another EZDrummer 2 tutorial video. This time talking about the added playstyle feature from EZDrummer. So if you take a look at my screen, you can see that I prepared a couple of recordings already. So, I was thinking of some kind of a classic rock beat or classic rock riff. And I was recording 2 rhythm guitars as well as a bass guitar. So in this video tutorial we are going to find a groove, a drum groove that fits very well to this one. And then we are going to use added playstyle to customize it. So we can use it for a couple of different purposes. For example, we can make it sound like a pre-chorus, a chorus, or a verse just by customizing the drums, okay? So before we start, let's have a listen how this riff or this guitar riff sounds like without any drums, okay? So have a look or have a listen. Okay, so it's technically repeating over and over again. So you can see that I was getting some slices of the original recordings, and I was, so each and every 4 bars I was repeating this guitar riff. Technically, in case you're interested, this is a simulation of a high watt guitar amp, fairly low gain as you can hear, through a cap IR of high watt as well. And you can hear that it's some very dark and bassy sound, which I really like for this classic rock stuff. And then I also have a recording of a bass. It's just a really simple bass line following the guitar melody just an octave below. And that's pretty much it, okay? So now the only thing that's missing is obviously the drums. So let's just get started with the drums. So I was including EZDrummer already in my drum track. And here you can see that I was deciding for the 70s Rock EZX, which, this is an older drum kit and it fits very good to this old guitar sound. So in order to get started, let's just quickly use the tap to find feature to find a beat that technically fits or that fits very good to this particular guitar riff. So for classic rock stuff, usually very gentle drum beats work very well because you can always overdo your drum grooves by adding too much complexity and stuff like that. And mostly, the very simple melodies and the very simple percussion grooves are usually going to sound the best, especially when you take a look at classic rock. So let's look for something very let me show it to you. I'm missing the word. Okay. Something like this. Something very simple. So again, you can see the search results over here. And now let's just have a listen at a couple of these. Okay, so I like the second one here in the results list because it's, the third one, I think the intensity was a bit too high with this open hi-hat. So let's use this one as our beginning riff. So I'm just dragging and dropping it into the sequencer again. And then if we have a listen how it sounds like with the guitars and the bass. Okay, so maybe I should start from the beginning and then it's going to work. Okay, so maybe the guitars are a little bit loud, so I'm going to make them quieter. As you can see, I was creating a submix bus for both the left and the right rhythm guitars, so let's have a listen. Something like that. So it's hard to mix this because I'm wearing my headphones, and these are very, very cheap headphones. So I technically just use them to have a listen at audio files if there's some clipping or some unwanted noises that I want to get rid of. But usually I always take my studio monitors because this is obviously the best, the best kind of speaker or the best kind of setup to mix your songs. Anyway, so I like this drum groove. I think it fits very good to this kind of guitar riff that I was recording. And let's take a closer look. So right now you can see that this groove, the original one, has a length of 8 bars, which is technically twice our guitar riff. So I'm just going to cut it down a little bit. And now let's start editing this using the Edit Playstyle feature from EZDrummer 2. So in order to customize this drum groove with the Edit Playstyle feature, you can either do a double click or you can make a right click, and in the new menu which is popping up you can select Edit Playstyle, okay? So double clicking is just a little bit quicker, so this is why I got used to it. And then you can see this is the Edit Playstyle, let's say window. Technically it's still the EZDrummer 2 window, but you can see that the view has changed a little bit. So, some drums are now grayed out, and you can see that you have a couple of colored drums. So let's start with the obvious things that you notice when you take a look at the Edit Playstyle feature, which is that the drums that are not in color are not going to be used during the drum groove, okay? And then you have two handles that you can drag and drop anywhere on any instrument of a drum kit, and one of these is called Opening Hit, okay? And the opening hit is pretty self-explanatory. This is technically what EZDrummer is playing at the beginning of your drum groove. So let's drag it to the right cymbal over here. Okay, and every time we start playing this drum groove, our drummer is now playing the right cymbal one single time at the beginning of the drum groove. And that's it, okay? So if you like to have an opening hit, you can drag it to whatever instrument you want. You can also drag it to somewhere else. And please note that the fluid tom over here, that I'm hovering with my mouse, is even darker than the other instruments, because it means that this drum is not available in the drum kit I selected. So when I'm going to play this one, you can see that there is a mute icon coming up, and it's playing the next fluid tom instead, which is obviously the first fluid tom. Okay, so this is actually what's happening when you see something that is grayed out and it's very dark. It means that's not part of your drum kit. Okay, you can also see it in the regular view of EZDrummer. Here you can see that it's still grayed out, which means that this is not part of your drum kit. But every time you play a drum groove that is using this instrument which is not available, it's going to play the upper fluid tom instead. Okay, as you can see. So let's go back to the Edit Playstyle. And the opening hit is very self-explanatory. And then you go to the left side where we have the power hand. And the power hand is technically the rhythm the drummer is playing with the right hand. And you can easily change this as well, but just by drag and dropping it. And in this particular case, we are obviously playing the hi-hat. So let's have a listen again. So if you want the drummer to play the left cymbal instead, you can just drag and drop it into the cymbal. And then the drummer is playing the exact same pattern on the cymbal instead. And you can see that this is creating a very intense drum groove, which would be better for some kind of a chorus or something where you want to have a higher intensity. So let's put it back to the hi-hat. So if we were following my recent tutorials about EZDrummer, you know that all these different instruments have been recorded using different articulations. So for example, when you have a hi-hat, you have a million different ways to play the hi-hat. You can play it open, you can play it closed, you can play it just using the pedal. You can play it hitting it on different positions with your drumstick. So you can switch these articulations in the Edit Playstyle editor, okay? So when you want to play the hi-hat, and at the moment we are playing a pretty close hi-hat, but if you want to switch it, you can go to this little rectangle on the right side of the handle, And then you see all the different articulations available for this specific instrument. So at the moment we are playing the closed tip sample of the hi-hat, and let's say we want to play an open hi-hat, so let's use open 3 instead. And then it's playing the sound one time, and now if you play back your recording, you're going to hear the open hi-hat. Which would sound really, really good for some kind of verse or something like that. And then, you follow with the pre-chorus, which is a more open hi-hat, so it has more intensity. And then when you hit the chorus, you can go to the simple and go full nuts. Okay, so you can see just by changing the power hand and by changing the instruments of your drum groove a slight little bit, you can make it feel like some kind of verse, you can make it feel like a pre-chorus, like a chorus and stuff like that. And there's even more you can do. So let's take the power hand and put it back to the hi-hat. Like this. Okay, so and it switched to closed tip again. So every time you switch it to any other instrument, it's going to take the default recording that it is meant to be played with this drum groove. And since we put it back to the hi-hat and the original drum groove was recorded with the closed tip sample, it's obviously switching back to closed tip. But you can click this rectangle again and switch any of those articulations you would like to use. Okay, so let's take a look at the bottom. This is also really important because here on the left side you have a little drop-down menu that allows you to select the instruments. So you can see that when you select any of these instruments, you just have to click on them, which is pretty straightforward. So we have the tom selected, and then you can see down here in this menu, the fluid tom 1 has been selected already. So you can either select an instrument just by clicking on it, or you can use the drop-down menu here at the bottom. This menu also allows you to select all the drums at the same time that are used in the groove. You can use all toms or all crashes. Or you can select simple or single instruments the way we did before actually. So when you take a look at this list, you can see that on the kick, the snare, the hi-hat and cymbal 2, we have green cymbals or green rectangles on the left side of the list, which means that this is going to be used during the drum groove. So you can use this list to see immediately what is going to be played during the groove, okay? Another way to see what's going on is when you play an instrument, okay, and select it, like the snare. And if you take a look at your drum groove object in the sequencer view of EZDrummer, you can see that the snare hits and the snare Midi Notes, so to say, they are highlighted. So you can easily identify the snare pattern just by taking a look, and you can see that the snare is being played regularly. Same for the kick drum. If we use the kick drum, you can see the kick drum kicks or hits are up here, and these dotted lines, these highly frequented dots down here is the power hand, our hi-hat. So if I select this one, you can see this is being highlighted. So these are the Midi Notes. Alright, so then you have the possibility to select a single instrument, so you can use the snare and say solo selected, which means that everything else is going to be excluded, but just temporarily, okay? So you're not deleting any of the drums with this button. It's just like when you want to listen to the snare only because maybe you want to do some mixing, and I'm going to show you something later, which is multi-track routing of EZDrummer. So you can technically mix this like a real recording of a drum kit with a couple of different microphones. And then sometimes this can be handy, whereas you can do exactly the same inside your DAW as well. So this is more useful when you are using the standalone version outside of your DAW. Nevertheless, you can mute single instruments, or you can actually solo single instruments. Click it once more to have the entire drum notes again. Then you will notice we have a little knob that's called amount, and technically this is allowing you to adjust how often an instrument is being played during a drum groove. So for example, let's say we want to change the power hand a bit and we want to have even more hits on the hi-hat. Then you can click on the hi-hat and you can increase the amount number. So when you take a look at the notes highlighted here in this object, you can see that as I increase the amount, EZDrummer is going to add more notes to this object down here. So when we increase it, you can see more notes, more and more notes coming up. Okay, let's have a listen how it sounds with a lot more notes playing the hi-hat. Okay, and this is something what I like about EZDrummer, because EZDrummer is not just adding more notes, but it's actually analyzing your drum groove, and depending how it classifies your drum groove, it's making some kind of suggestions how the beat is going to sound like when you add some more hi-hat hits, for example. So it means that whenever you select an instrument and you increase the amount, EZDrummer is trying to find a beat and a pattern that's going to fit to your overall drum riff or drum groove. And the reason why I like this so much is that this doesn't just work with EZDrummer grooves, but it also works with any third-party grooves or even recordings you make with your electronic drum kit or your MIDI keyboard, okay? So you can use the add playstyle feature and this kind of amount suggestion for any kind of groove, and it doesn't matter where it comes from, okay? So this is an incredibly helpful tool. Okay, so you can turn the amount up and down, but there's even more you can actually do. I mean, of course, you can also reduce the amount of hi-hat hits, okay? But what's also really cool is, for example, that you see that, let's say you want to play the toms as well in this drum groove, and you would think that, well, okay, you can drag and drop the power hand to the toms, but the problem is that then the hi-hat is not played anymore. But what you can always do is you can select one of these instruments and you can keep the power hand on the hi-hat and select the fluid tom, and then you go in amount, increase the amount. And you can see that as soon as I increase the amount of hits played on the fluid tom 1, you can see that it's not grayed out anymore because it's now being used in the groove, and you can see in the notes down here that our drummer is actually playing the fluid tom 1 4 times throughout this groove. So let's have a listen how it sounds like with the toms added. Okay, and then you can also change the velocity, which is technically how hard the drummer is going to hit the instrument you have currently selected. So you don't necessarily have to do it with the toms. Of course, you can use any instrument, okay? So let me just quickly say remove MIDI, which is the quickest way to get rid of this instrument. And you can use it on any instrument you would like to use. So you can also use the left cymbal and add it in, just for some kind of variation, okay? So the drummer is mainly playing the hi-hat, and then every now and then he's going to play the simple one to kind of, you know, let's say to create something fresh. Because if you hear the same drum groove over and over again, it gets boring, and, you know, it bores the listener, which is definitely not what you want to do with your drum sound, okay? So let's have a listen how it sounds like with 2 different simple hits added. Okay, and this way you can use the amount and the velocity to create or to, you know, to tweak the drum grooves even more towards your song, whatever you need for your song. So if you think the velocity is a little too high, you can turn down the velocity just a little bit and then have a listen again. It's just the right amount, okay? So this is really cool. So let's assume you want to use the same MIDI notes for some different instruments. So let's say you want, every time you play the left cymbal, you want to play the right cymbal as well, as if the drummer was hitting both cymbals with both sticks at the same time. You can try to select the second cymbal and increase the amount, but as you can see, EZDrummer is not going to play them at the same time as your first cymbal. So if you want your drummer to play both instruments at the same time, there's a very easy trick, which is you can always copy the MIDI notes from your entire drum groove, which will include each and every instrument, Or inside the edit playstyle view, you can actually copy the MIDI of a single instrument. So what we are going to do now is we will copy the MIDI, so the 2 hits of the first cymbal, just by right-clicking it, as you have seen. And then we right-click on the cymbal 2 and say paste MIDI. And then we can say paste all, or we say paste crash. So this is really cool because let's say you copied the snare. You can also copy the snare beats over to the cymbal. In this case, you would have to select you want to copy the snare, obviously. So let's now copy paste the crash. And now you can see that technically both should be played at the same time. Whereas this is played at the first time because this is still our opening hit. Or isn't it? Because this moved over. Let's have a listen how it sounds like. Okay, it's a little bit weird that the opening hit was moved over by this. So let's move it over here again once more. Okay, so copying the files was somehow, resetting the opening hit. But anyway, you were able to see that the drummer was now playing both cymbals at the same time. Obviously, it's not really realistic because you can see he plays it at the same time where he also plays the hi-hat. So he has just 2 arms. So how can he actually play 3 different instruments, okay? So this is something you have to watch out when you edit drums like this, because when you overdo it and edit or you actually add too many different instruments, it's pretty obvious that this can't be played by a real human being, because a real drummer just has 2 feet and 2 arms. So when you have like a million different instruments going on in the drum groove, it's pretty obvious that this is not going to be played by a real human being, but it's rather some kind of a drum sampler. So if you want your drums to sound realistic, this is something you should also take care of, even though when you use edit playstyle to edit it, because you can, with edit playstyle you can technically make adjustments that are not really realistic, so you always have to watch out a little bit. So let's go on. Let's actually move the MIDI. So you can use the amount knob to reduce the amount of cymbal 2 technically, or you can just right click and say remove MIDI. But since we turned down the amount, there are no MIDI notes available, so it's grayed out. But whenever you want to get rid of an instrument, right click, say remove MIDI, and that's pretty much it. Okay. So there's even more you can add. You can add claps, you can add a shaker pad as well, and as well as a tambourine. I hope I was pronouncing it correct in English. So let's add a tambourine, for example. So if you use these 3 different instruments, before we add the tambourine, let me explain that the way you use these is a little bit different. So first you can activate it by clicking on the activate button or the switch on off button, and then you have it in your beat. Okay, you can see that it is now selected, and then you can see the the notes of the tambourine down here in the drum groove. Okay, so when we play it back, you can hear it in the groove. Okay, so you can use this to create some additional percussion that is available within EZDrummer 2. But the way the amount works for these 3 instruments is a little bit different, because as you click the plus and the minus button, you can see that it's pretty short. But you can switch between quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes, whole notes, and you can also choose different articulations. So let's say we want to have quarter notes with no articulation, which means the tambourine is being played in quarter notes, and each hit is technically as loud as the previous one. So there is no specific articulation on the first, the second, third, or fourth beat. So let's have a listen how it sounds like. Okay, so this is the regular quarter notes, and then we can adjust it and say we want to have the articulation on the third hit of this tambourine. So let's have a listen. So when you want to use it to kind of, you know, to create some additional percussive elements, it's very cool because the amount knob in this case allows you to make some very nice tweaks on the articulation when it's going to be articulated and stuff like that. Which is really cool, okay? And then, of course, as always, you can use the velocity knob to change the velocity to make it louder or quieter. And this is a very, very nice feature, okay? So let me just quickly take a look at my list, whether I was showing you everything I was planning to. So, we have this one as well. There's nothing missing, I knew it. Okay, so this is for those of you who have been watching the recent tutorial video about the advanced search, okay? So when you remember when you were taking a look at the search tab, you know that there is a filter called power hand. So now, since you know about the edit playstyle feature, you know what the power hand is obviously good for. Because by filtering by power hand, you can actually say that you want to have drum grooves where the power hand is on the snare. Okay, so if we select this filter, you can see that we can take any of those grooves, and if we go to the edit playstyle by double click, you can see that the power hand is on the snare. And then if we want to edit this, we can just quickly drag and drop the power hand to something else. So in case you know, this is useful if you actually play with the hi-hat a lot for intensity, for example. So let's say your drum groove is pretty much the same throughout the entire song, but the only difference between the verse, the pre-chorus, and the chorus is that you have, you know, you're playing closed hi-hats, open hi-hats, and then the cymbals for very high intensity parts. So by selecting the power hand on the hi-hat, closed or open, let's take open and drag it here and edit it, you can see that you have a drum groove going on with the power hand on the hi-hat. And then if you want to have more intensity, you can simply click here and use even more open hi-hat, or even just drag and drop this over to the cymbal completely. Okay. And this allows you to quickly control your drum groove. So when you know what you want to do with your groove, you can use the power hand filter to kind of find grooves that allow you to, let's say, to make easier adjustments using edit playstyle. Because when you pre-select what kind of instrument is being played by the power hand, you know that everything you need to do is you just have to drag and drop the power hand to another instrument, okay, in order to change it. It sounds a bit weird, but the more you get used to working with EZDrummer, the more you will actually find this feature useful when you work with the edit playstyle quite a lot. Alright, so we also covered articulations. Let me see, copy, cut, and delete MIDI. This is something we did as well. Ah yeah, okay, so this is something I want to show you. Because let's say we change this articulation over here. So let's go over here and have a listen again. Okay, so let's change it a little bit. Let's say we want to have more kicks with the kick drum. So we select this, and first we have to open Midi playstyle. We select the kick, and then we can increase the amount and have a listen how it sounds like. Okay, so let's assume we tweaked it a little bit and we like this one. Possibly you now want to save your result, which is pretty easy because you can just close the edit playstyle, and then if you like this one, you can go over here, right click the object you have edited, and then you can say, where is it? Add to user MIDI. So this is going to add this to your user MIDI, which you can find in the browser on the right side. And here you can see that now this should be our verse. Okay, and from here you can actually rename it. So let's say, let's call it pre-chorus. Oh yeah, I was hitting the spacebar, which is triggering my DAW to play. So let's just call it pre-chorus 1. Okay, so let's avoid the spacebar. And then in your user MIDI, you can create folders. And let's say let's call this classic rock, for example. And then you can go to user MIDI and just drag and drop this one to classic rock, and then you have your classic rock, technically a folder called classic rock with your custom MIDI file. So what's really cool about this one is that when you use the search or the browser and you use tab to find or you use the song creator, it doesn't matter. Every time you search for MIDI files using EZDrummer, it's also taking a look in your custom MIDI files. And which means that technically you created a completely new drum beat that is different from anything that was provided by EZDrummer. And when you are taking a look and and when you take a look and want to find something similar for future projects, then it's also taking a look into this, okay, which is technically really, really great. So the more you do this, the more you use edit play style. And every time you save your drum grooves, the new ones you created, you are having a bigger and bigger library of possible drum grooves for your future songwriting, which is awesome, okay? I was showing you everything you need to know about the edit playstyle feature, and there are a couple of options you might find inside the edit playstyle, but we are going to use this in future tutorial videos. For example, when we are recording our own drum riffs or drum grooves using MIDI pads or a MIDI keyboard. So this is one of the upcoming tutorials, and slowly we come to an end of this tutorial series, but don't worry, there are still like 4 or 5 videos I'm going to make for you, because there's still a lot to learn about EZDrummer 2. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more EZDrummer 2 tutorial videos. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop a comment in the comment section below. And otherwise, we're going to see us in the next video. Bye bye.